Hello, my name is Julia McAllister, the granddaughter of Reverend Dr. Robert Sullivan. Dr. Sullivan's lecture today is derived from his recent book entitled God's Greatest Experiment, Man. Dr. Sullivan welcomes his viewers, encouraging them to sit back and enjoy a journey through time and space, making discoveries new and revealing. I would like to now invite Dr. Sullivan to share his story. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Once upon a time, actually, time had not yet begun. In fact, nothing was happening anywhere or any place. All was quiet. And then someone, and I do mean someone, lit a match and started a firecracker-like explosion that expanded into space in all directions. We've come to call it the Big Bang. It would have been quite a sight to see. That was 14.2 billion years ago. It was the birth of our universe. For the next 10 billion years, stars and planets were forming as the universe continued to expand and is still expanding according to some scientists, and will expand for the next 8 billion years until it loses all its energy and fire. And then it will burn out. It will die, to be no more. Was this to be a one-shot deal, this making of our universe? And who got the bright idea of creating this universe in the first place? It had to be someone rather than something, say a few scientists, but who? 10 billion years after the Big Bang, our Earth was formed. It was a planet like so many others would be, revolving around a sun. Over the years, our planet experienced many dramatic changes. Sometimes it was too hot, sometimes it was too cold. And finally, it was just right for a miraculous thing to happen. Life suddenly appeared on planet Earth 3.8 billion years ago. Nowhere else in the universe as we know it has this ever occurred. Was this a novel idea? Or was it a planned experiment? What do you think? Ever since life first appeared on our planet, our Creator has brought forth 5 billion life forms through a process called divine evolution. You've probably seen illustrations of this on the tree of life that Darwin and others proposed. You can see from the timeline of the universe that you have before you the kinds of life forms that God did create over the next 4 billion years. Finally, our Creator took a daring and risky chance. He decided to create man, a life form after his own image. Why daring and risky? Because God was going to remove many of the chains of instinct from man that had held all other life forms imprisoned. Now, what is instinct? Well, Webster defines instinct as a largely inheritable tendency of an animal or man to make a response to stimuli without reason or thinking about it. Man would be the first and only life form to be freed of many instincts. He would have what we have come to call free will. One scientist said, maybe man was an afterthought. Maybe God never intended to create anything like man. For the previous 4 billion years, God had created 5 billion life forms, nothing at all like man. So why did God wait so long to try his experiment? What do you think? Are we an afterthought? I put together a story of how God might have gone about creating man, creating you and me. After all, civilizations have been writing creation stories as far back as 7000 BC. The Jews created their first creation story around, 1000 BC. And then they created another one about, 600 BC. You'll find them in the first 2 chapters of Genesis. My creation story is derived from the most recent discoveries of science. It's concerned mainly with the creation of man. I began this creation story with God sitting in front of a drafting board with his pen in hand. The board is blank. So, the first thing that God must decide is, what will man look like? Well, we know that God decided that man would walk on two legs and stand upright. No other animal has been given that ability. Did you know that? Most animals have 4, 8, or even 100 legs like the centipede. Of course, the birds walk on two legs, but not animals. Then God decided that man would have the highest intelligence of all the species he ever created. In fact, man would be called Homo sapien, which means intelligent man. Now let's see. Thought God, I'll allow man's eyes to appear in front so he can judge distance better. He'll have a voice box that will eventually, through evolution, show him and allow him to speak, something no other life form can do. Oh, sure, all animals can grunt and squeal and make clicks like the dolphin and the whale, but they can't speak because they aren't intelligent enough to create words. Oh yes, I think I will enable man to develop an alphabet, and then words, then to put those words into sentences, then into books that he will store in libraries, building upon discoveries of those who have gone before. I think I will give man the ability to imagine, thought God. Only I have had that ability, but, well, he shall have it too. With that ability, he'll be able to bring to life those ideas he has only in his mind. Through his imagination, he will create great works of art, music, and literature. No other life form can do that. And I will enable man to discover all that I have made, everything. He'll want to know how everything works, how everything came about, how old the earth is, why the sky is blue, whose bones these are of life forms that have lived thousands of years before him. Yes, inquiring minds want to know. And then I will let man to have dominion over the planet. Well, with some reservations to keep him from, well, messing things up. Most important of all, I am going to instill in man's mind an awareness of me, recognizing that he has a creator and can talk with me when he chooses. Oh yes, I almost forgot. I want to enable the mind of man to evolve until he will come to know, as no other animal can, right from wrong. I want to encourage man to live a moral life, practicing good, not evil. I know that's asking a lot, but I have given man the mind and the freedom to do it. If he does it, or only if you do it, I have plans to reward him that includes living beyond his 70 or 80-year lifespan. I think that's fair. Now I'm done. There he is, the finished product. Oh, it's good. It's very good. Paul Davies, a world-famous physicist, wrote, "It may seem bizarre, but I think science offers a surer path to God than religion." Now, how can that be? Because we live in a world and a culture that turns to science for the truths of life, don't we? Religion isn't doing very well on most college campuses, you know that. Neither is it doing well in our culture, and perhaps not even in our own family. I may ask those whom you know and love if they still believe in God or religion. Observe how many of them still attend church or Bible study. In the Bible it is written, "The fool says, there is no God." Are our learned professors who dismiss God as a delusion the fools? Or are the students who live by their words? And are all who think that God is an outdated superstition and the Bible too old to be relevant the fools also? Believe it or not, that's about to change. Why do I say that? Well, because a growing number of scientists have set out to prove that God does exist, that a creator does exist, through their own disciplines of cosmology, physics, astronomy, biochemistry, biology, and consciousness. Let me illustrate. I will start with cosmology, the study of space. These scientists have set out to prove that our universe had a beginning. Up until recently, scientists thought that the universe always was and, well, might continue on forever. But if the universe had a beginning, then these scientists say there had to be a first cause, right? And that cause, they say, had to be a superior intelligence who had design in mind. The universe, they said, did not just happen by chance, as Darwin proposed. Let's now turn to biochemistry. This is one of my two favorite proofs of the existence of God through science. Using an electron microscope that can magnify an image 50,000 times, these scientists have shown us that microscopic machines can be seen in every cell of our body, every cell. These machines work to keep us alive. You have a picture of one of them in front of you. It has gears, a rotor, and a spindle. These scientists declare that these machines have been designed by a superior intelligence, not by chance. My second favorite scientific proof of the existence of God comes from biology. By 1970, most researchers have rejected the idea that information necessary to build the first cell originated by chance alone. Scientists now believe that the DNA in our cells had to be designed by an intelligent source. It could not have come through an evolutionary material process. If that has metaphysical implications, said some scientists, so be it. Now to astronomy. George Greenstein has written, "Is it possible that suddenly, without intending to, we scientists have stumbled upon scientific proof of the existence of a supreme being? Scientists are seeing signs of design, a kind of unlikely fine-tuning for life, like the fine-tuning of physics, that allows for life to exist on just one planet. The data imply that Earth may be the only planet in the right place at the right time." Now the evidence for God from the science of physics. The once skeptical Paul Davies, the former professor of theoretical physics, is now convinced that there's a purpose behind the universe. "Through my scientific work," he writes, "I have come to believe more and more that the physical universe is put together with an ingenuity so astonishing that I cannot accept it merely as a brute fact." And another physicist wrote, "The fine-tuning of the universe provides prima facie evidence of deistic design." And finally, the science of consciousness offers its proof of the existence of God. These scientists claim that our soul, or our mind, is separate from our physical brain. They claim that our soul, or our essence, is immaterial. Now imagine scientists claiming that when they normally only deal with physical proofs. Furthermore, they say that our soul, or our mind, or our essence, has been given to us by the one who created us, who is also immaterial. Doesn't the Bible say, "And God breathed life into man, and he became a living soul"? Well, that's enough of the heavy stuff. If interested, you can read more about what these scientists have discovered in a book entitled "A Case for a Creator" by Lee Strobel, that you can purchase through Amazon. And incidentally, most of these scientists that I have mentioned were once atheists or agnostics, and they are at the top of their fields. For the past 53 years, the marvels of nature have always prompted me to believe that someone created everything, and that man's creation, with all of his unusual abilities, made him something special and for some purpose. When I was a boy, I was asked to memorize one of the Psalms for an evening church service. I was one of about 6 other children selected to recite. I chose Psalm 8, well, because it was the shortest psalm in the Bible. I think it was providential because contained in that psalm was the profound question, what is man? That psalm was created by a Hebrew sage who lived at least 3,000 years ago. Let me recreate the possible scene of his writing for you. Allow me some editorial license. Our author is probably sitting alone under the stars one night in deep thought. All is quiet. And finally he says to himself, "O Lord, our Lord, how awesome and amazing you are. Because when I look at the heavens above me and the works of your fingers that surrounds me on all sides, the moon and the stars that you have created. I mean, what is man that you're mindful of him, mindful of me, and his offspring, that you care for him? For you have made him a little less than yourself, and crowned him with glory and honor. You put all things under his feet. Yes, God took a risk in creating man, in creating you and me, in removing our chains of instinct and giving us a free will. Unfortunately, God's experiment hasn't always gone well. In fact, 1,000 years after our Jewish author wrote Psalm 8, apparently God decided that things had gotten so bad on planet Earth, and man so had misused his freedom, that he decided to send someone to get his experiment back on track. He even took the chance of sending his own son. Throughout the Old Testament years, God has been taking an active part in his experiment with man. Sometimes he inspired certain individuals to rise and show the world what he expected of them. They were called, prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Moses. In reading about Jesus in the New Testament, we can see how he healed those who had made bad choices with their freedom, or who had just suffered under circumstances that were not of their own making. Jesus tried to show those who were receptive how to make choices that would restore joy and peace to their life through their relations with others and their environment. Today, we are very much aware of the misuse of man's freedom that has produced broken lives, in the destruction of our fellow man through war, and the tragic ongoing destruction of our environment. Did all listen? We listened, and it has made all the difference in the world. I want to share 2 real-life stories with you about those who used their freedom wisely and those who didn't. Here's a story where things didn't turn out so well. In 1923, a very important meeting was held at Edgewater Beach Hotel in Chicago. Attending this meeting were 10 of the world's most successful financiers. 25 years later, by 1948, the following circumstances had overtaken these individuals. The president of the largest independent steel company, Charles Schwab, died a bankrupt man and lived on borrowed money for the 5 years before his death. The president of the greatest utility company, Samuel Insull, died a fugitive from justice and lived on borrowed money until his death. The president of the largest gas company, Howard Hobson, became insane. The greatest speculator, Arthur Cutten, died insolvent. The president of the New York Stock Exchange, Richard Whitney, was sent to Sing Sing prison. The greatest bear on Wall Street, Jesse Livermore, died a suicide. The head of the greatest monopoly, Ivor Kruger, died a suicide. The president of the Bank of International Exchange, Leon Fraser, died a suicide. Each of these men lost something that money could not buy. Some lost their freedom through imprisonment. One lost his sanity. They all lost their self-respect. And 3 of them even lost the will to live. But the most important thing all of them lost was their peace of mind. Our second story revolves around a man who used his freedom wisely. The blizzard began in the middle of the night, and all day heavy snow and sleet pelted the city of Washington, D.C. A little after 4 p.m., we got a call that a plane was down. It had hit a bridge, and the plane was now laying in the Potomac River. Taking off in our helicopter, we arrived at the scene a few minutes later. Only the tail section of the plane remained, jutting up from the icy water of the Potomac. 6 people were clinging to it, 3 men and 3 women. I dropped a rope to the survivors with the loop on its end. The rope settled into the arms of an alert-looking man who seemed to be in his 50s. What he did with the rope surprised me. Instead of grabbing it, he gallantly passed it to the woman next to him. He got her arms in the loop. Well, we managed to fly her to shore. Then we returned to the tail section. The rope was dropped. Again, it was hard to believe what I saw. In the water, the alert-looking man in his 50s caught the rope, and he passed it to a second woman. She couldn't hold it. So a younger man took the rope and grasped the woman in his arms, while another man and woman clutched the rope as well. It's all we can manage, I said. Lift, I shouted. The engine strained and the copper shuddered as we rose just high enough to pull the foursome through the water towards the shore. 5 were saved. 1 to go. Relieved how well it had gone, we rushed back to the wreckage, but the man in his 50s was gone. He's gone, I said. Disappeared beneath the water. If any trace of him appeared, I was ready to leap and swim down to him, so badly did I want him to live. But there was nothing but the icy black water. I shall never forget his pale upturned face, watching us moving away with the others, knowing probably he would not be there when we got back. My name is Gene Windsor. I'm a paramedic who flew aboard that chopper. That plane crash was a terrible tragedy in which 78 people lost their lives. Yet the memory of that selfless man helping those he saved will sustain me and millions of others for years to come. The man in the water could not make ice storms or freeze the water, but he could hand life over to a stranger. He pitted himself against an implacable, impersonal enemy. He fought it with charity. He held it to a standoff. He was the best that we can do. Said Gene Windsor, when Jesus said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for a friend," I know he was speaking of the man in the water, whose name I don't even know. Now, what about you? How well are you handling the freedom that God has given you? I want to conclude with a poem entitled "Creation's Lord, We Give Thee Thanks" by William Hyde. Creation's Lord, we give Thee thanks that this Thy world is incomplete. The battle calls our marshaled ranks. The work awaits our hands and feet. That Thou hast not yet finished man, that we are in the making still, as friends who share the Maker's plan and sons who know the Father's will. But though the kingdom long delay, and still with haughty foes must cope, He gives us that for which to pray, a field for toil and faith and hope. Since what we choose is what we are, and what we love we shall yet be. The goal may ever shine afar, the will to win, it makes us free.